Welcome to KCU, where we recap the week in Canadian college football and look to the week ahead. Loads of entertainment and fan support last week with over 9,000 in Sherbrooke, unofficially close to 10,000 at UBC, and the best crowd in years at Foot Field. But we will start in Ontario. And Ryan, tell us where.
All right, thank you, Jim. We'll start things out in the Hammer, the OUA into its third week. However, the McMaster Marauders and the Ottawa GGs both have had their respective byes, so they go into week 3 with just one game under their belts. Both teams are 1-0, and we're looking to remain unbeaten, but there must be a loser in this game. Only one of those records could remain unblemished. Just who will that be? Let's find out. We start out late in the second Q. Ottawa up by one score. GG's receiver Ian Stewart fields a pass at the MAC 37. 2 stiff arms later, not one but 2, he gets to the sideline and he takes it to the house. But right before the half, MAC pivot Asher Hastings tosses up a jump ball into the corner of the end zone, and my man wearing the clogs, Danny Van der Voort, comes down with the leather. Last minute of the third, Van der Voort, he makes some history. He takes this Hastings toss and he goes 61 yards. That is Clutch Dutch's 19th career touchdown, which ties him for the school's all-time record. MAC scores 26 unanswered to take a 15-point lead until Derek Wendell hits Greg Cherniak with this 43-yard pass and score, which cut that lead to just 8 late in the fourth Q. But MAC caps the game with this trick play. Mitch O'Connor takes the snap and boots the leather to the sideline, and guess who? Oh, you know it. That's Danny Van der Voort. The onside punt worked to perfection. It capped the game for the Marauders. MAC's second-year pivot Asher Hastings now has 10 touchdown passes in just 2 contests. The 99 points put up in the game is the highest scoring game the Marauders have ever been involved in. It's Waterloo and it's Queens. Do not adjust your TV set. Yes, these are 2 different touchdowns from Gales running back Jesse Andrews, which puts the home side up 14-0 early on. Waterloo respond with a major of its own. Lamb Ding hauls in this Lucas McConnell pass, and he Lamb dings it all the way to pay dirt. Gales lead cut to just 7. Third Q, Queens up by 14. Better make that 21. Nate Hobbs to Curtis Carmichael, and this one is done. Andrews continues to put up massive numbers for the Gales. In 3 games, he's amassed 481 rushing yards, which is tops in the nation. Carleton, Windsor. First 5 minutes of the game, Ravens up by a rouge. Jesse Mills to Malcolm Carter. He puts on the brakes and blasts his way past 2 defenders all the way to the house. That put the visitors up by 8. A couple minutes later, Tunde Adeleke fields this punt and then puts the Lancers special teams into a spin cycle. Kids, take note. This is a lesson on how not to tackle. He goes 78 yards for the major. This one was over early. Carleton takes it with ease. The Ravens put up over 550 yards of total offense in the game. Javari Bennett with a massive one, putting up close to 190 yards with 2 majors. Guelph with a 49-22 win over York, spoiling the Lions' homecoming. The Purple Ponies continue to stampede their competition after stomping Laurier by 50. OUA standings now, and surprise, surprise, it's those very Mustangs on top at 3-0, tied with Guelph. While 3 weeks in, and York, Windsor, and Waterloo are still in search of that coveted W.
Let us start with MAC. The defense has yet to gel, and even if Asher Hastings and Danny Van der Voort are rolling, it's pretty impossible to win games against quality opponents in November, Gord.
Well, I think giving up 35 points against an Ottawa GG's offense that has been rolling so far this year isn't as big a deal as we might believe. Now, on the defensive side of the ball for the McMaster Marauders, they lost a lot more than they did on the offensive side of the ball, including just about their entire secondary. So it's going to be one of those teams that's going to take a little bit of time to gel. They have a tough test this week against the Guelph Griffins, so we'll see where they are. But this may be a team that experiences a hiccup or 2 along the way. We already kind of saw one versus the University of Toronto, and I expect they'll get better down the stretch and finish as a 3-4 seed here.
Maybe it's just a one-year cycle, maybe part of a greater trend, but the middle of the OUA seems to be sinking to the bottom. Windsor and Laurier have been playing to the level of Toronto, Waterloo, and York. Is that a concern, Sean?
Well, I don't know if it's a concern. I mean, I think the OUA has been a league that has not been characterized by complete parity throughout the years. I think one of the issues that is at play here is that the disparity between the two top teams in Guelph and Western and the bottom four teams is massive right now. Combined average score, 61 points for those top two teams and 12 points against. That is just not entertaining football, unfortunately.
When we return, we will go west, where the crowds were big, so was the offense.
The CFL and our partners at Football Canada want to make sure we keep growing, promoting, and investing in a safe game. Football Canada now requires all amateur coaches to be safe contact trained by 2017. By creating a standard of safety for all in our football community, we're making an already great game even better. Make sure your youth coach is safe contact trained, because making a safe game means making a better game.
Welcome back to KCU, everybody. In the Canada West, Calgary made a statement that they are a force to be reckoned with. Sully?
All right, thank you, Mr. Mullen. Last year, the Manitoba Bisons ended the Calgary Dinos' 6-year run as the Canada West champions. This year, the Dinos are looking for a little revenge, and they got that chance this past weekend on the road in the Peg. However, Manitoba's coming off a big opening week road win of its own, and we're looking to put their stamp as the team to beat in the C-Dub. The horns were on as the Bison's faithful were looking for yet another win over the Prehistorics, and they love this on the opening kickoff. Oh, do they ever.
Lyles with the kickoff return, gets out across the 30 and he finds a seam. He gets across midfield. Jamel Lyles across the 40, the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Jamel Lyles.
A very emphatic call from our very own Jim Mullen. The super rookie Jamel Lyles continues to bust out big plays for the Bisons. Speaking of big plays, early in the second Q, Teo Dizar goes to the air. Alex Vitt jump balls with the two defenders draped all over him. Makes an unreal grab. Check it out. That put the Bisons up by 9. Third Q now, home side up by 5. Dizar shows off his cannon of an arm. This time it's Jesse Walker who hauls it in. That's a 64-yard major. Bison's lead grows to 12. But at the end of the Q, we get a little more excitement from Mr. Mullen.
Let's go right now, though, at receiver. But there's some inside speed by Mercer Timmis. The big red truck has popped it into overdrive. The 10, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Calgary Dinos.
Start your engines, Mercer Timmis with a 79-yard major. The big red truck getting it done. The Dinos would outscore the Bisons 27-14 in the second half and come from behind to take it 46-38. Timmis, 426 rushing yards, leads the Canada West. He's averaging close to a first down per carry with an unreal 9.3-yard average. Saskatchewan and Alberta. An excellent crowd on hand for this one, about 4,000, trying to help those Bears improve to the perfect 2-0 start to the season, but the hometown fans had nothing to cheer about early on in the first half. Score already 4-0, and Tyler Chow runs this one home. It's 11-blank Saski. Before the end of the half, Chow back for more, second TD of the game. Saski leads 18-0 at the break, but cue the comeback. Early third Q. Ben Kopczynski with the QB keeper that puts the Bears on the board. Shift to the fourth now. G-Bears down by just 4. This 3-yard score from Jimmy Ralph puts the home side ahead, and they don't look back. Saskatchewan blows an 18-point lead at the half and get outscored 38-8 in the second half. Regina, UBC. Homecoming at Thunderbird, and a great crowd came out for this one. First Q, T-Birds. Alex Morrison hauls in this second TD to make it 14-1. Second half, Tyler Vieira goes deep for Mitch Thompson, not once, but twice. Thompson's 2 majors cuts the T-Birds lead to 1 score. Shift to the fourth, Rams down by 7. Vieira looks end zone, but Taylor Loeffler, he's all over it, picks it off. That sealed the deal. for the T-Birds, and they take it by 7. UBC got its biggest home crowd in close to 25 years with an attendance number that's up for debate. Let's check out those Canada West standings. The Albertans continue to keep that seat warm atop the standing board.
Alberta 2-0, Saskatchewan 0-2. Did you see that coming, Sean Olsen?
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't see that coming. I didn't think University of Saskatchewan would be 0-2 at this stage. Both of these teams have been playing some very, very good football. Unfortunately, it's been in two different halves. The story of these two teams throughout the season has been the second half. So far this year, the U of S has been outscored 48-14 in the second half, and that's why they're 0-2. For the other University of Alberta Golden Bears, it's been 59-15 in their favor in the second half. Not since 1992. That's when I was graduating high school. Has the University of Saskatchewan been 0-2. This is a huge week for that program. They need to come out and see if they can get a win to get back to 1-2 this year.
You know, I think it bothers a lot of folks in the press box when schools either can't count their crowd or refuse to acknowledge student attendance at games. There look to be 4,000 to 5,000 in Alberta and over 9,500 at UBC. Now, on the field, the Birds responded in the first half, but the last 30 minutes, the Rams really showed us something, Gord. Tell me what you thought of the Regina Rams in that final 30.
Well, I think we're seeing an emerging name here in the Canada West in unheralded backup out of Winnipeg, Tyler Vieira, who was forced into action when Noah Picton was taken out of this game early in the third quarter. Vieira came in, connected twice with Mitch Thompson on a highlight reel, grabs in the end zone, and generally moved that Rams offense up and down the field in the second half. On the UBC side, I think we saw a little bit of inexperience take over, both at the defensive coordinator position and on the field on the defensive side, as I didn't see a lot of pressure looks from the Thunderbirds in that second half in a game that really wasn't as comfortable a margin as they were acting as if it was. So, like you said, with another couple minutes in this game, Regina may well have come back to at least tie this game and maybe take the lead. So UBC should feel lucky to escape this win, and having talked to a few of them after the game, I think they do.
The Manitoba-Calgary game, fantastic game to call, fantastic game to be at, but if you were a player, you must be feeling the effects of that game. It was physical from the gun to the ribbon. What is going to be left of these guys on these two teams if they keep playing at this level, Sean?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm still feeling the truck stick from Cameron Fox on the Calgary Dinos secondary. That was one of the hardest hits I've seen in a long time. That game, the physicality was one thing, but the amount of big plays that you saw, especially in the first quarter and then in the fourth quarter, was astounding. The game started off with the University of Manitoba, huge kickoff return. The game completely shifted at the end of the third quarter when Mercer Timmins took the ball 79 yards for a touchdown. Up until that point, Manitoba seemed to have the game in hand, and Calgary didn't seem to have their bearings. But after that point, it was all Dinos. And 207 yards for Mercer Timmins in the second half alone. That was mind-blowing to me. And that's the sign of a good team. And I think this game comes down to young stars at the University of Manitoba and old stars, established stars at the University of Dinos.
When we return, it's the start of football down east. Stay tuned. Krown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Krown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of university football on Shaw. Krown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Krown Countdown U. It's time for a new segment that debuted last week and is already up for a daytime Emmy. X's and Olsen with the coach himself, Sean Olsen. Okay, thanks Ryan, and welcome back to the new hit sensation that is sweeping the nation. It's the second edition of X's and Olsen. Now this week, Coach wants to talk about our Canada West featured game of the week, a Thursday night all-Alberta affair between the Calgary Dinos and the upstart Alberta Golden Bears. Now in the last 3 meetings between these teams since Coach Morris took over at Alberta, the Calgary offense has averaged 66 points a game and 387 yards rushing. We're going to take a look at two different plays this week. First, Coach, we're going to look at Rashawn Simonize, a guy who's been lighting up the Canada West for a couple years now, has finally filled out that 6'4" frame of his, put on about 210 pounds on it. New offensive coordinator Ryan Shane really likes to isolate Simonize and get him into one-on-one coverage. Let's see how he does it.
Well, I'll tell you what, every quarterback in the CIS wishes they had a guy like Rashawn Simonize. Right here, it's a 4x1 set, so you have 4 receivers to the bottom, and you've got the isolation right up here to the top. Simonize is going to run an under pattern. It's a great way to avoid getting jammed up. Let's run it forward here. This is your classic way to isolate a talented receiver. You see Rashawn coming across the formation. He clears the linebackers, catches the ball in the flat, and now he's turning it up the field for a 13 or 14-yard gain. Over here is a little bit of a different look here. Pause it right here. You've got Rashawn here in a double tight set. The two tight ends here allow the wide receivers to use a full waggle. This is a great way to take a talented receiver with speed who can blow the top off a defense and get a soft coverage. Right here, he's gonna run a deep out pattern. Run this forward. I've counted 10 out of 19 receptions for Simonize this year have been on this pattern. Another 12-yard gain, and that's how Coach Sheahan is using Simonize to create mismatch nightmares for defensive coordinators.
All right, thanks, Coach. And arguably the most pivotal position battle in this upcoming affair will be between the Calgary offensive line and the Alberta Golden Bears defensive line. Historically, at least in recent history, a bit of a soft spot on the Alberta side and a bit of a strong point on the Calgary side. Coach Mercer Timmis went off again last week, as he has seemingly his entire career, and that veteran Calgary O-line really dictated their will in the second half. How did they do that so effectively?
Well, I'll tell you what, this has been for these two teams, coaching against them, you have to prepare for the offensive line of the Calgary Dinos, and you better be able to take advantage of the University Golden Bears defense line. Right here is an example. You got the two Ryans, and you've got Sean McEwen at the center spot. Right here, let's roll it forward just a little bit. Pause it right there. Right here, you see that everybody has got leverage on their gaps, okay? Right here, these are some of the toughest blocks for O-linemen. They have to move quickly and get leverage and reach their opponent. Right here, let's roll it forward. And you'll see all three gaining leverage, pushing them, widening the edge, and creating a nice seam for Timmis to finish and get vertical on his run. This clip here is of the University of Alberta Golden Bears defensive front. You've got the two defensive tackles, Garrett Meeks on the left side of your screen and Greg Severin on the right-hand side of your screen. Both of these players are a full gap outside of their offensive linemen. You're going to see a play here where the University of Saskatchewan offensive line takes 2 steps and is able to get the outside shoulder of both of those players and then cut them and get them on the ground. Let's roll this forward. This is a major issue in the run game versus a very talented University of Calgary team right there. They're down on the ground. You can see the crease, and allows the running back to square his shoulders and finish the play with authority. If the University of Alberta is not able to do a better job this Thursday night versus the Dinos, it'll be a long game for them. You'll see a lot of that going into the end zone.
All right, thanks for that, boys. Great work as always. Let's shift gears now. I'm shifting gears here. Let's get back to the rest of the action from across the CIS. To the east we go. We'll start in the Far East, not Asia, to the Maritimes, Halifax, Nova Scotia to be exact, where the AUS season kicked off with the reigning champs, the Mount Allison Mounties, taking to the road to face off against the St. Mary's Huskies. Well, this one was over early. 10 minutes into the game, Mounties up 3-0. Mike Bohan fields this punt, makes a defender miss, gets a sweet block, and he is gone. That's a 66-yard scamper all the way to the pay dirt. Mounties taking it by 32. The win was the Mounties' 12th straight regular season victory, a winning streak that dates back to 2013. St. FX and Acadia. This one was tied at 15s at the half, but the Axemen blanked X 16 nada in the second half, en route to a 31-15 win. Acadia running back Tommy Troop looking to have a bounce-back season after missing a good portion of last year due to injury, yet he had a big game, rushing for a game-high 145 yards in the win. 1 week in and not much has changed. Mount Allison holds that top spot with Acadia. Over to the RSEQ now. Laval on the road in Sherbrooke. Second play from scrimmage. Hugo Richard to Benoit Gagnon. Brousseau. BGB goes 72 yards all the way to La Maison. Laval takes the early lead. Right before the half, though, Sherbrooke pivot Jeremy Rock hit Carl Gagnon, takes it for a very quick 57-yard major. We go into the half tied at 14. Shift to overtime. Game tied at 24 is now. Sherbrooke misses on this 42-yard attempt, but Laval does not miss on this 9-yarder. The Rouge et Or squeak out a 3-point win in what was a nail-biter in Sherbrooke. Richard left the game due to concussion protocol. It's still unclear if he'll be ready to go for Laval's next game at Bishops. The win was Coach Glenn Constantine's 100th of his career. McGill, Montreal. The Carabin avenged its loss to Laval last week with a 40-point whipping of the Redmen. Regis Sibassou with a monster game, racking up 163 yards on 6 catches with 1 touchdown. The Carabin put up over 500 yards on offense, while the defense held McGill to just 58 rushing yards on the day. Big board time now in the queue. Laval alone on top after 2 very close games to start the season.
We're now joined by Charles-Antoine Senat, color analyst for the RSEQ on TVA Sport. And Charles, let's get right to it. We went through this a few years ago, and it's come back on the radar again. There are issues with the offense in Laval early on in the season. What is not working, and what do they do to go about fixing it?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as saying that things are not going well. Like, if you were looking at this weekend, they amassed close to 500 yards on the offense, 222 yards on the ground. The only thing is they're not necessarily constant from a quarter to another. And as always, Laval has not been known to get some good start to the season. And on top of that, they faced 2 really good teams to begin the season with. Montreal, obviously, who was number 1. But Sherbrooke this year should be a very, very good team. They're really mature. So all of that to say that I'm not saying the Laval offense is perfect right now. It's not necessarily clicking at all time, but they've had some pretty good defense to face, and now their starting quarterback is injured, so that's another story. But all of that to say that, like, I wouldn't panic yet. They have a lot of good athletes. One thing, though, 2 starting O-lines haven't had much playing time experience in the past, so you know how it is. It takes time to gel, and I think they'll get there very soon.
What is the status of Gorman winner Hugo Richard? He was knocked out of the game. He was in concussion protocol. Should we see him next week, or is that undetermined right now?
Well, I've asked the media officer at Laval today, and I didn't get an answer back. However, like you mentioned, it definitely seemed like a concussion. His helmet was removed right away. And Laval has a very, very strong medical staff, very professional. And with everything that has happened in the past couple of years with concussion, I'm convinced that they'll be following that protocol. And the protocol states that there's 6 steps that are launched when the player is symptom-free. He was doing really well, so I wouldn't rush him back in. It's a long season, and they have solid athletes in the backfield that can take away pressure from their new quarterback.
With the push to OT against Laval, are the Ver for real? Can they win one of the 3 regular season games remaining, or inevitably one of those 2 playoff games against Montreal or Laval?
I really think they are for real. Let me compare their situation with Montreal's situation last year. Not in terms of talent, but in terms of where they're at with the maturity. So last year was Danny Machocha's 4th season with the Carabin, and we saw that his 4th-year players, 5th-year players, the guys are recruited when he first came in. We can think of Byron Archambault, Anthony Cody, guys like that stepped it up in their 4th season. So, and if you look at Sherbrooke this year, David Lassard is also entering his 4th season, and it's a really, really mature team. They have a 5th-year quarterback, but they also have a really solid O-line, returning. All 5 are returning from last year. Same thing on the defensive front. And as you know, the fronts are crucial to success in Canada and in Quebec, especially when you face, like you said, Montreal and Laval twice. All of that to say that this team is as deep and as talented as I've seen in the last 3 years.
Thanks very much, Charles. Now let's take a look at the games coming up this weekend. Now it's time to go to the games of the week. To you, Coach Olson.
The game I'm going to talk about here is going to be the University of Manitoba versus UBC. UBC has got to find a better way to get out of the tunnel in the second half and come out and play some more physical football. They've really struggled to this point in the year in coming out at halftime. This is going to be a game that comes down to turnovers. Young team, both of them talented. Whoever turns the ball over the most, I think, is going to come up on the end of the short end of the stick. And then it's going to come down to the lines. UBC has a young offensive line. They've got an opportunity to be very, very good in a number of years. But right now, that big, beefy front of the Manitoba Bisons with David Onyemata and Evan Foster is going to be a very, very difficult task for that unit.
Queens Western, just saying the words still gives me chills. I got to mention that game in passing, but I suspect that the best game on the field this week in the OUA will be Guelph versus Mac. Now, the questions for Guelph are big. They threw 5 turnovers in that game and that win over York last weekend. And how prepared can you be for a Mac team having come off a game against a cupcake like York? Whereas Mac, on the other hand, has to be firing on more or less all cylinders after a win against a very strong Ottawa GG's team. I'll be watching this one closely as that young defense we already talked about for Mac tries to stop a high-flying Guelph offense.
My game is Sherbrooke and Montreal. Now, both of these teams were in games they could have won against Laval, which both ended on a Rouge et Or field goal on the final play of the game. And this is why you like the 5-year rule in the CIS. 2 fifth-year quarterbacks, Gabriel Cousineau of Montreal and Jeremy Rock of Sherbrooke, are going to slug it out. We will see if the offensive and defensive fronts of the Vert et Or will show signs of wear and tear after their battle against Laval. Sherbrooke might be the most interesting story developing in the East. It is clear that they have the toughest schedule in all of the CIS. 2 games against Laval, 2 games against Montreal, and the interlock game against champion Mount Allison. They have a tough road to the playoffs, but they may be able to make a statement if they can carry over momentum from last weekend. That does it from the Krown Countdown News studios. Folks in the Maritimes, you can see the AUS on TV1. OUA fans, keep your eyes on Rogers and Cogeco stations. And in Quebec, games are on TVA. And of course, there are 2 games for Shaw customers following the Canada West. This Thursday in Calgary when the Golden Bears come to town, and Friday when Saskatchewan hosts Regina for the Saskatchewan Cup. And it is all on the road to the Hardy Cup playoffs on Global TV this November. So let's get out to the game.